Nothing gets our dipsticks wet like a classic muscle car. Problem is, a lot of those classic muscle cars are impossible to find at a reasonable price. But I got some good news for you greasy knucklers. This is a list of 10 classic muscle cars that you can still find for less than $10,000. We've got some cars that you would expect and some cars that you might not. This is the list. Big thanks to Dr. Squatch for sponsoring this episode.
There was a time not too long ago when I was but a wee lad, caught in the body of an internet car guy, longing to spread my manly eagle's wings and fly. Just when I thought I'd never emerge from my cocoon of childishness, a creature of mythical proportions shared the secrets of becoming a real man. He said to be a man is simple. You need a few things. One, to own an axe. You need your own meat thermometer. You have to have a favorite salad. And finally, you gotta get rid of the box of hotel soaps you have under your sink and use some good soap. And I said, hey man, how do you know what's under my sink? He said, James, I know everything. And I said, do you know how to play saxophone? And he said, but of course. Wow. Solid, so soulful. So now that I've ascended to the next level of manliness, a quick word of advice from Papa James. The soap you are using is probably not very good and not made of things that you want on or in your body.
Head over to drsquatch.com and use code DONUT to get 20% off site-wide on purchases $20 or more, and click the link below to check out Dr. Squatch's best-selling bundle.
Chevy Nova.
Everyone loves the third gen Chevy Nova. It's one of the muscle cars. But something a lot of people don't know is the fourth gen Chevy Nova is pretty good. It's not that bad. And I'm gonna go so far as to say that it is a classic. So here's the thing. By the mid-70s, these fourth-gen Novas would have to comply with all of these new environmental standards from the freaking government, slap in a bunch of emission stuff on the cars and reducing the horsepower, which ultimately reduced stoke levels to an all-time low. I mean, fourth-gen Novas had like 170 horsepower, okay? Medieval times has more horses than that. But to be fair, medieval times does have more horses than most restaurants. But even though they might not have had the killer engines of the previous gens, it's still a Nova, and I think it looks friggin' cool. It's a little kind of like a little square boy in a good way. It's like SpongeBob. I've actually looked at these quite a bit. I think they're a real great value. I think they look like a muscle car. And let's be honest, guys, if you are building a muscle car, you're probably going to swap the guts out anyway. Maybe a 396 or 454. Heck, you can buy an LS crate motor at Walmart. And I know that this car doesn't have the same reputation as that sweet early 70s third gen, but guys, I'm calling it. Fourth gen Nova slaps, and all you'll need to get started is about 4,000 bones.
Ford Galaxy.
The Galaxy was the name given to a bunch of full-sized Fords from 1959 to 1974. The name Galaxy was supposed to cash in on all the excitement of the space race, to inspire a generation of gearheads and stargazers alike to take humanity to the edge of a new frontier by going real fast in style. The Galaxy was FJORD's answer to the Chevy Impala, and this rivalry would kick off a race between Chevy and the rest of America's top car makers. But this race wouldn't be for space, but for pace. One of the most popular Galaxy lines, the 500XL, boasted a 425 horsepower V8 with a top speed of 135 miles per hour. It went from 0 to 60 in 6.9 seconds. Nice. And did the quarter mile in 14.9 seconds at 96 miles per hour. CN 96 is 69 backwards. Now, you'd think that people would be scooping these things up like freaking ice creams from Baskin-Robbins, but people slept on them. And because of that, you can still find a bunch of Galaxies for less than 10 grand. And I'm not talking about your uncle's trash heap project car either. You can find these suckers in pretty mint condition, like this one. It's sold for right under $10,000. And this guy's cherry. Cherry!
Dodge Polara.
The Polara was Dodge's answer to the Ford Galaxy. And just like the Galaxy, the name Polara was all about making people think about space. It makes me think about my 8th grade crush, Polara, the one that got away when she moved to space. But names aside, it's what was under the hood that made the Polara a good car. The 1969 Polara had a hefty V8 engine that held the Chrysler test track record for the highest top speed for a factory-built sedan until 1994. The first Polaras were meant to bring out your inner Don Draper. They were big-bodied, luxury 50s throwbacks, complete with a big old chrome front bumper and Jetsons taillights. Dodge tried to slim the body down early on, but Dodge fans, they weren't having it. The Polara pulled a reverse Gucci man and traded away muscle and agility for size and luxury, and it never quite shook that rep, which is why I think so many enthusiasts leave it off of their classic car muscle lists. But plenty of Polaras are still around in great condition with a bunch of engine options, like this one. Super clean, 65 with a 383 V8, one of the best V8s Chrysler made at the time.
Plymouth Duster.
The Plymouth Duster is one of the coolest cars named after a jacket, and it was the smaller, sportier version of the Plymouth Valiant. The Duster was marketed to compete with other teeny weeny tiny cars of the time like the Chevrolet Vega. But don't be fooled by its small size and logo that kind of looks like the Tasmanian Devil doing a Doritos ad. The Duster offered a 340 cubic inch V8 capable of 275 horsepower, which is pretty big for its size. The Duster became so popular that Dodge, like an annoying little brother, wanted a Duster of its own. And Mama Chrysler obliged and gave Dodge its very own Duster. And in what was probably the biggest good idea bro moment in car history, Dodge decided to call their version of the Duster D instead of the first name that they thought of, the Beaver. That is not a joke. That is, they were going to call this car the Beaver. Duster sales held strong, so the Demon name would become less of a staple and more of a name Dodge could pull out whenever they had a new, limited, badass version of something that they wanted to push. And if you don't have 80 to 100 grand to throw in on a new Demon, well, you can have your own piece of Plymouth muscle that started it all. Like this super clean 73 with a V8, no leaks, dings, or rust for less than $9,000.
Chevy Monte Carlo.
When Chevy introduced the Monte Carlo in 1970, they obviously had big plans for it. Some might say that naming a NASCAR Chevy after a Formula One race is like naming your son Ronaldo, but he ends up growing up to be like a lasso guy or something. Early 80s NASCAR was dominated by the FJORD Thunderbird. Around the track, it was nicknamed the Aerobird because nothing came close to how aerobic the T-Bird was. That is, until Chevy said, "Here, hold my lasso," and came back with a redesigned Monte Carlo. Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s dad, Dale Earnhardt, drove one of these and he won a ton. This is the car that helped the Intimidator become the Intimidator. Now, of course, the consumer version of the Monte Carlo SS had an emissions-choked 305 with 180 horsepower. But to me, this boxy 4th gen body is the embodiment of 80s muscle. I mean, look at this bad boy. Slap some IROC wheels on there, cow hood, rate that rear end a bit, fit some fat meats under that butt. Boom! Woo! That's a good looking car. And this one is in really perfect shape, and it's only $9,000, and it looks sick. And it's not even clapped out or nothing. You can smell this car through this ad. And I know that this car might not be traditionally considered a classic muscle car, but what's classic today is completely different than what was classic 10 to 20 years ago. And what's classic 10 to 20 years from now? Well, you gotta be smart. Have some vision.
Chevy El Camino.
The El Camino, the most infamous American ute, just so happens to be based on the Chevrolet Chevelle platform, i.e. one of the most expensive muscle cars around these days. The super popular Chevelle body style was the perfect foundation for the El Camino to be built on. The sharp edges and sleek silhouette gave you the look of a top-of-the-line muscle car, with the utility of a very small pickup truck, just in case you love burnouts but want to pick up a fruit tree every once in a while. What I'm saying, guys, is that you can get the same engine options as the Chevelle, and for some reason, maybe because it's sort of weird looking or something, this car is heavily slept on, i.e. cheaper. And it's also heavily slept in because you can fit a queen size air mattress in the trunk. And you can get a queen size motor up front. I'm talking a 454 V8 making 450 horsepower. El Camino was not here to play games unless the games is ripping faces. And on top of that, the El Camino combines raw power with that utility that we all cream for. And Chevy continued to make the El Camino year after year after year, refining and tweaking all the way into the 80s. I like them all, and you can find them all for pretty cheap.
Third gen Camaro.
For the next car on this list, we're taking a field trip to CAMARO land. Get in line, kids, and hold each other's hands. This is a place where Mountain Dew Code Red flows like water. There's a sunglass hut on every corner, and they're giving away free Oakleys. Sonic Drive-In actually exists. I mean, sure, we've all seen the commercials, but has anyone ever been to one? Has anyone ever really ordered tater tots, a slushie, and a chicken sandwich with toast for buns from the same place before? No way, man. Sonic does not exist. Follow the money, all right? Follow the money. In the 2 decades before they went fully Neve Schulman, I'm talking catfish, Chevy was turning out some of the baddest ass and meanest looking cars to ever hit Camaro land. But unlike the rounder first and second gens, the third gen was sharp, boxy, and edgy, just like my knife. Some people don't like this look. Haters are gonna hate. But if you ask me, the third gen Camaro is as classic as an 80s muscle car gets. Mullet sold separately. Part of the reason you can find third gens for so cheap is because they had smaller engines early on due to emissions regulations. These third gens were the first Camaros to be built with 4-cylinder engines. But with each model year, Chevy pumped in a little bit more muscle. And by the late 80s, with performance options like the Z28 and the IROC Z, the third gens offered a 350 cubic inch V8 capable of 330 horsepower. Not bad. Now, of course, the 350 cars never came with a manual, which we learned a couple weeks back, but that doesn't stop them from being certifiably bad to the bone marrow. Look, to some, if it ain't a classic pony looking Charger or Trans Am, it ain't a classic. But the third gen Camaro is a solid piece of 80s muscle that you can find without selling a kidney. And it looks like a car that you would drive to buy someone's kidney.
Mercedes E55 AMG.
Now you might be saying, James, what the heck, you put German car on this list and the muscle boys on the list? Heck no, brother. Well, I got news for you, son. Muscle cars don't have to be from America. Look at frickin' Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's got more muscles than anybody, and he's Australian. And even though this muscle car was made this century, I guarantee it's classic. Now, if you kindly let me explain. When Mercedes introduced the AMG E55 in 2003, it turned a lot of heads. At the time, the fastest sedans on the road were putting out 350, 400 horsepower tops, but somehow the stars aligned and Mercedes released this, a sedan that came loaded with a 5.4 liter supercharged V8 making 469 nice screaming German ponies and 516 pound-feet of twerks. Does that put enough mustard on your pretzel, pal? The E55 had a 0 to 60 time of 4.5 seconds, making it the quickest sedan in the world at the time. Mercedes stepped the horsepower game all the way up at a time when car makers weren't really focusing on big old engines and speed. This car changed all of that. You know how you can find a bunch of cars now with like 800 horsepower? You can thank the E55 for that. And shockingly, you can find a super solid one like this one for right around 10 grand.
Dodge Magnum RT.
Speaking of cars from this century, I got another curveball for you. The Dodge Magnum RT. Sure, it gets a lot of hate for looking the way that it does, but gosh dang it, it's still a Dodge, and I will always sucks with Dodge. Even if it is your uncle's station wagon, the Magnum ain't your daddy's station wagon. When the RT version debuted in 2005, it came with a 340 horsepower 5.7 liter Hemi V8. Had one of the most iconic Dodge commercials of all time.
What do you got in that thing? I got an amp, guitar, surfboard, ladder, and 12 2x4s.
This big booty wagon was surprisingly responsive for its 4,295 pound curb weight. I mean, it's an American fast wagon. So why is this car a classic, you ask? Well, Dodge in the early 2000s wasn't known for horsepower the way that they are today, all right? They didn't have the Hellcat. They didn't have the Demon. They didn't even have the Scat Pack. The Magnum is a classic because it's an important stepping stone in Dodge's history, a stepping stone towards the high horsepower sedans that they've become known for and based their entire brand around today. The Magnum delivered a powerful Hemi V8 in a car that didn't lack in utility or practicality. So, next time you see a Dodge Demon, shoot the Magnum a text and say, hey, thanks for being you. And you can get one for like $6,000.
Ford Mustang.
Now, it's only fitting that the #1 muscle car on this list is one of the most iconic cars ever. And I know a lot of you are going to say, James, this isn't a muscle car, but I'm going to say pony car is muscle car. I'm not going to get into that fight with you guys. The Mustang is a car that car people and non-car people think is a cool car. The only people that don't like Mustangs are Camaro owners. Think about a car that you like. It's probably a response to the Mustang. Supra, Camaro, RX-7, none of these cars would exist if it weren't for the Stang. James Bond had one. Steve McQueen had one. That kid from Tokyo Drift had one. I Am Legend Will Smith, Nicolas Cage, John Wick. So many Stangs. It's a freaking icon. So you may be surprised to know that you can still find the most iconic first generation for super cheap. And this is because they made a ton of them. And with every new revision came a slew of new interchangeable parts so that Stang fans could build the Fjord of their dreams. That means not only can you still find first-gen Mustangs for under $10,000, you can still find a bunch of different parts for them. You can buy parts for this car at freaking AutoZone. You can own a badass muscle car without breaking the bank. You may have to step outside of the box a little bit, take a stab at something you might not think of as a classic right away, find a big name on an off year, but it's possible. If you stumbled across any cool classic muscle cars that were surprisingly affordable, let me know down in the comments. The coolest comment will get pinned, baby. Thanks for watching this episode of the D-List. If you liked it, make sure you hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. We make a new video almost every day. To learn more about affordable fast cars, check out this episode of Wheelhouse. I love you.